As an older hiker, do you get hung up in the logistics of getting to and from your hikes? I got this video suggestion from viewer Waterman Ormsby-W10. Hiking solo. How to get back to your car starting at one point and returning to another. The real question is, how do we deal with getting to and from a hike if we lack the logistical support that a partner could provide? There are a lot of reasons why this could be the case. We might not have a partner at this stage in our lives, or we may be going far afield from our home and it would be too much to ask of them. That's my situation. This year, I'm taking a break from the long backpacking trips of the past 5 years, and I'll be doing shorter hikes of 1 to 4 days. Expecting my wife to drive me to trails that are more than an hour from our home is too much to ask from a non-hiking spouse. She'll drive me to nearby Vermont, but New Hampshire and Maine are just a bit too far. There's a wider question here about trail logistics, so for completeness, I'll go over a number of planning options, some of which may seem obvious. Yet on occasion, I've come across hikers at trailheads looking for a way to get back to where they started. Once when 3 of us were hiking together, we gave a ride to a couple of hikers, and they said, "Oh, we should have done that," amazed that we had thought to leave a car at each end of our hike. They had left 2 cars at their starting point. I was actually amazed that they had gotten so far in life without hurting themselves. For getting back to your car, the most basic option is to walk back to it. Sounds simple enough. Plan a hike that loops back to the same trailhead like I did with this hike in the Green Mountains. I took the Appalachian Trail from the trailhead on Route 9 near Bennington out to the Goddard Shelter on the side of Mount Glastonbury. Then I took the West Ridge Trail and some other connecting trails back to that same trailhead. Even simpler, if a loop isn't an option, do an out and back. Hike out on a trail and then at a predetermined distance or time, turn around and hike back. You end up going over the same terrain twice, but it's a different experience in each direction. This option is almost always available, whereas a loop sometimes isn't feasible. If you use time rather than distance as your criteria for turning around, you take away the pressure of needing to make miles. It's especially a good way to test out new equipment such as a tent or hiking shoes, a stove or hiking poles. If things aren't working out, you just turn around sooner. But what about when you really want to hike from point A to point B? For example, if you're trying to section hike a trail. Each of the following ideas comes with pluses and minuses. Of course, having 2 people in 2 cars is the simplest, but that's exactly the situation that our reviewer implied was just not available. He went on to say, stash, or lock, a bike at a road crossing where you plan to finish and ride back to your starting point where you left your car. He says he may even upgrade to an electric bike or scooter. He's never seen this covered, but he's been using it for quite a while. I'd personally suggest leaving the car at the end and biking to the start, locking the bike there and picking it up after the hike. As noted in the suggestion, he points out that he places his bicycle ahead and pedals back, but his legs are getting tired. I think doing the bike first would work out better. I really don't want to be riding a bike, possibly wearing a pack, probably on winding roads that are common in rural areas, with a chance of running out of daylight. I'd prefer to not hike in the dark, but with a good headlamp, it's manageable for short stretches if I happen to be running late. One thing that's true most of the time, the miles you'll be biking will be more than those you will be hiking. They'll be faster probably, maybe 10 to 15 miles per hour bike ride versus a 2-mile-an-hour hike. Our viewer has been doing it for years, spanning south into Pennsylvania and north into Vermont from his home in New York. In those states, there are plenty of road crossings along the AT, and the logistics are a lot cleaner. I assume that for trail segments further from his home, he'd want to do several days in a row this way. Let's look at a typical ride back. I've chosen this hike and bike section. Climb over Mount Moosilauke in New Hampshire from Glen Cliff to Kinsman Notch along the Appalachian Trail. It's only 8.2 miles, but they're not easy ones. The ride back is about 16 miles, including a winding dirt road, or nearly 22 on just paved roads. On those roads, it may take 2 to 3 hours to bike the distance. The 8-mile hike over Moosilauke can take 4 to 9 hours by itself. And of course, whether you bike first or last, you need to secure your bike so that it's there when you need it or when you pick it up. This hike illustrates a related option. Make use of available services. The Hiker's Welcome Hostel is near the south trailhead of this stretch. You can arrange a ride from the hostel to Kinsman Notch for a reasonable fee, then hike trail south from the Notch back to the hostel. Stay overnight at the hostel, again for a reasonable fee. Most hostels I've stayed at along the Appalachian Trail offer slack packing options, which is essentially what this is. You get dropped off at a trailhead and you hike back to the hostel. Of the 2,200 miles on the AT, I've covered maybe 100 miles that way. Our viewer said he may upgrade to an e-bike or scooter. I think that would be preferable if the hiking part is purely a logistics choice and not part of the intended activity itself. Whether it is or not is a matter of attitude. If I was doing this, I'd be doing it for purely logistical reasons. My concern is the security of the bike itself. If you can, find a safe place, a nearby home or business that won't mind you leaving it in the yard or parking lot rather than chained to a tree at a trailhead. I've never used an e-bike, so I'm not the right resource for this information. I'd encourage you to look for videos on this subject. I'd want to know the range because if the battery drains, you'll end up pedaling a much heavier bike than a standard mountain bike. You also need to check the local regulations where you'll be riding them. I've left a link in the description for the US viewers covering the laws in all 50 states. You could just wing it by depending on the kindness of strangers to give you a lift. Of course, there's always a danger that you'll get picked up by a serial killer, but I think the bigger risk is that you end up with no ride at all, especially in remote areas with less traffic. I personally never depend on hitchhiking, but that's my personal choice. Or you could use public transportation where it's available. I'll be doing an out and back on the Wintastiquet Monadnock Trail soon. The train from Northampton stops a mile from the trailhead in Brattleboro. If I time it right, I can get a train there one day and back the next. Bottom line is don't give up on hiking if you're going solo and prefer single-day hikes or maybe single overnights. If you've been faced with this problem and have solved it some other way, please let us know in the comments. If you appreciate this content, please like, share, subscribe, and comment on this or other topics you'd like me to cover. And if you haven't seen this video, please take a look at it now. Thanks for watching.